51% of us will die of heart disease. Doesn't matter if you're male, if you're female, if you're black or you're white. It does not discriminate. The first sign, 50% of the time, is sudden death, and most people don't get a second chance to clean up their act. But this is a food-created disease. It really does not matter what your genetic predisposition is. Unfortunately, what's been being passed down from generation to generation are the bad eating habits, right? Are you doing a lot of cheese steaks, and are you doing a lot of burgers and Coca-Cola and milkshakes and Mountain Dews and Twinkies and Ding Dongs and all that kind of nonsense? Or are you doing steel cut oats and honeydew melons and kale and broccoli and amaranth and quinoa and whole grain pasta and whole grain breads, right? Different story. But so I saw my father doing this amazing research. Within 2.5 years of embarking on this research, he had proof of concept. He had proof of concept, which means he actually was able to show in a before and after angiogram, which is when you take an X-ray of the blocked artery before and after, and he showed reversal. And this has really only been done a handful of times by my father and a guy named Dean Ornish from the University of California, San Francisco. Nathaniel Pritikin also had some pretty good research and studies. But you know, this little secret is out of the bag. Unfortunately, most cardiologists aren't quite aware of it right now. But the reality is that the most effective way for anybody to treat this disease at a cellular and molecular level and treat the true causation of the disease is through what you're putting in your mouth for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. And if you're putting in weak foods that are riddled with all the building blocks that promote disease, it's little wonder that at the age of 40 or 50 you can have your first heart attack, you're starting having chest pains, angina, your first stroke. These are just natural. This is a natural progression of us eating the wrong foods. It's not a natural progression of us aging, right? Major cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity. These are not natural incidences that happen when we age, but most of us seem to think that it's just part of the aging process, and that's not the case. So my father. Secondly was a guy named Dave Scott from Davis, California. He was 6-time winner of the Ironman triathlon. He was a hardcore vegetarian. And when I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 1986, with a degree in speech communications, where I had gone to school on a swimming scholarship, I decided that I wanted to continue working on my athletic career. And I decided to go into the sport of triathlons. And when I learned that Dave was all plant-based, and because of the research my father had done now, I was all in. And so in 1987, I started eating this way. So I've been eating this way now for 27 years. And what I learned is that the cleanest burning fuel that we can put into our bodies, not only as human beings, but as athletes, is plant-based nutrition, right? It has everything that we need and desire as human beings and athletes, and really nothing that we don't need. And when you eat this way, you're getting the biggest bang for your calorie buck, right? It's no nonsense. Whereas when you're stuffing your face with meat products and dairy products and processed refined foods, you're starving your bodies. You're starving your bodies. We're stuffing our faces, and we're not getting what we need in the way of micronutrients, right? The things that plants have in spades, like fiber, like phytonutrients and antioxidants, and 17 of the major and minor minerals, and 11 of the 13 vitamins. So you're really flooding your system with all these plant-friendly foods that are very alkaline. So it creates a really nice a nice anti-inflammatory condition in your body as opposed to pro-inflammatory when you're eating animal products and animal byproducts. Eating this way allows you to recover quicker, perform better, find your ideal weight, right, really effortlessly, especially when you're training 2 to 3 hours a day. And you get to eat really almost unlimited amounts of food once you understand which foods you can eat with reckless abandon and which ones you need to be a little bit more cautious with, even within the plant-based world. And somebody remind me to talk about that a little bit later. It's the calorie density principles. But so I came to the conclusion, and I want all of you guys to get this, that there's weak foods that are out there and there's strong foods that are out there. And we have all been kind of led astray by the very, very powerful marketing arms of the, basically the dairy and the beef industries and the egg industries, to think that we need meat for protein, that we need, dairy products for calcium, and nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is that whether it's red meat, whether it's chicken, whether it's fish, whether it is pig, these are all weak, problematic foods that are riddled with all the building blocks that will tear us down. What are some of those things? Saturated fat. Saturated fat really only exists in animal products. The exception is coconuts and nuts. Nuts have low doses, low amounts of saturated fat, but other than that, you're not going to find it in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. So when somebody, says that saturated fat is good, or they're a big fan of saturated fat, or butter is back, or anything like that, know that what they're really saying is that meat is bad. They're a fan of meat, okay? Because that's really where saturated fat is found. And our bodies have no requirement whatsoever for saturated fat, none whatsoever. And the preponderance of the medical literature is very, very definitive, going back now well over 40 years, that saturated fat just promotes heart disease. It lays the foundation for cancer, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes, and we don't need it, right? Next, what else do you have in red meat, chicken, and fish? Really at almost the exact same levels, 70 milligrams per 3 ounces. Don't think that chicken has less cholesterol than red meat. It doesn't, and don't think that fish is healthier than chicken or red meat, because most fish has more cholesterol than red meat or chicken. But the reality is that we don't need to take cholesterol in our food. Our livers produce all we need naturally, right? And we need cholesterol, but most Americans have elevated cholesterol levels well over 200 milligrams per deciliter, and it's the #1 risk factor for heart disease. And you look around the world at populations that don't get heart disease, like the Tarahumara Indians, the rural Chinese, the rural Japan, the Papua Highlanders of New Guinea, and what you'll find is that they have total cholesterols between 80 and about 150 milligrams per deciliter. The average American, well into the 200s. So we don't need it in our food. And inherent in any muscle fiber, in those muscle striations, you have fat and you have cholesterol. And then another thing you have is you have problematic animal protein. The problem with animal protein is that it's of a composition and a proportion and balance that's too high in the sulfuric-containing amino acids. And this is a real number on our bodies. It does 5 things. Let's see if I can remember all 5 of these. 1, it raises cholesterol levels. Animal protein raises cholesterol levels. So if you're trying to get heart healthy and bring your cholesterol down, and you're doing it by doing skinless chicken breast, that ain't gonna do it. If you're trying to do it by doing salmon, that's not gonna do it. If you're trying to do it by doing, sirloins, forget it. So it raises cholesterol. Next thing, animal protein leaches calcium from our bones. So if you're a female in particular and you're trying to starve off osteoporosis, you don't want to be doing it by eating animal protein. It creates a condition called metabolic acidosis, and our bodies want to neutralize that, and they do it by pulling calcium, which is a great buffering agent, from our bones. All right, just to prove the point, America is one of the greatest consumers of dairy products on the planet. And we have one of the greatest incidences of osteoporosis and hip fractures. Something doesn't add up, something doesn't compute there, right? And that's because dairy, even if you're trying to get your calcium from dairy, it's an awful source of retainable or absorbable calcium. The best source of absorbable, retainable calcium comes from plants. They play and romp and socialize in the soil all day long, and it goes up, right? The calcium goes up into their roots, into their stems, into their leaves, and then we can eat those green leafy vegetables, that bok choy, that kale, that Swiss chard, those beet greens, and absorb up to 60% of it, 15 to 20% of the calcium in your dairy products. And that's why most people are left with a net deficit at the end of the day. So, draws calcium from the bones. What else does animal protein do? It accelerates the growth of everything, including tumors and cancers. It's harsh on your kidneys and your liver. And then lastly, animal protein. See, there was 5 and that was 4. Anyway, that's gonna have to do for now because I can't remember the last one. But what else do you have in animal products? You have something called L-carnitine that's in meat, dairy, and eggs. And L-carnitine, the bugs that are in our gut, we all have trillions. Somewhere between 3 to 4 pounds of gut flora, right, in our guts. And the bugs in your gut, they dig meat. But if you're eating meat, you form a different type of bugs than if you're eating plants. If you're eating plants, you form nice, friendly kind of gut flora. But these meat-eating bugs, they love the L-carnitine. They chomp up leftover amounts of it, and they belch out something called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, which actually makes your blood that much more sticky and makes you more prone to plaque formations.